name's Amelia. I'm a first-time mother and I'm almost 3 months postpartum. I wanted to do this video to just share my experience giving birth at a private hospital in Malaysia. The reason was because when I was trying to look for reviews, what was the process like, etc., I couldn't really find anything. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to just share my experiences. For my experience, so for my gynae, he actually has a clinic, but he partners, I'm not really sure how it works, he partners with the hospital if he has any deliveries, etc. So my checkups have always been at his clinic outside of the hospital. At my 38 or 39-week checkup, my gynae was actually suggesting for me to have an induction. The reason was because my amniotic fluid seems to be decreasing a little bit, but nothing too urgent, I felt, and also plus the fact that I had gestational diabetes as well. So the induction suggestion was a little bit of a shock to myself and my husband, so we took a few minutes to talk about it, and then in the end we said, okay, let's just go ahead with it. So my doctor scheduled us for an induction the following day at night. I want to talk about the induction process a little bit. I think it might be new to some people, especially first-time mothers like myself. So my induction process, what happened was that my doctor shared with me that okay, the first part would be to actually insert medication into the vagina. So what would happen is that the first medication, I'm not sure what it's called, but there were 2 tablets, or there's supposed to be 2 tablets. So the first tablet, you put it in, and then they will monitor the contractions and everything, see how it's going. If it's going good, after by 6 hours, then the second tablet is not required. But if the contractions isn't going as good as it should be, then they would insert the second tablet. So either way, after that, the process would be to put an IV drip on you to start Pitocin. Pitocin also helps with the contractions, or helps get the contractions moving along. So let's dive right into the process. So I actually gave birth at Sunway Velocity Medical Centre at KL. So after dinner, we went to the hospital, registered, got ourselves admitted. That process took about 30 minutes, and then we went to the delivery ward. For the delivery ward, there weren't any visitors allowed, except only the husband could be there. And I'm not sure whether it was a COVID procedure or it's a normal procedure, but just something to keep in mind for the time being. I should note that I opted for a natural delivery as well. So my procedure might be a little bit different or very different compared to someone who is going for a C-section. Alright, once I got to the room, I put on my robe. So essentially, up until giving birth, they would monitor the baby's heartbeat and your contractions as well. So for that, they actually have this CTG machine, a fetal monitor machine, where basically they put it on your stomach, and then there's like some devices that basically the purpose is to monitor the baby's heartbeat and your contractions as well. So when you're hooked up to that, basically you're just lying down on a bed, you can't go to the toilet, you can't do much. And another thing, because I opted for a natural birth, most probably they kept checking for my contractions and how dilated am I. And how they do that, it's basically the nurse would just shove their fingers right up your vagina, my vagina, every few hours or so. And I really hated when they were doing that. The reason being because it was so uncomfortable and it's painful to what I remembered. So the day before at the clinic, my doctor actually performed a cervix check, and I was 0 cm dilated. But at a hospital, for the first or second check, the dilation check, I was about 1 cm. At a certain point, a few hours after I checked in, the doctor came. Basically, my gynae came and he inserted the first contraction medication up my vagina. So then after that, there was some monitoring for a few hours, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, my dilation moved out about 2 cm, and then later around 2.5 cm supposedly. And then from what the nurses assessed, there was not a need to put the second tablet, but then I could start the Pitocin drips. But after putting the Pitocin drips, because it's an IV drip, I couldn't move. Basically, I couldn't go to the toilet, I couldn't do much. I could only stay on the bed. So with the IV drip in my hand already, and basically being immobile, the next question comes about is, how do you go to the toilet? So basically you have to go on a bedpan, if that's what it's called. Basically it's placed under your buttock, and then you just pee. So the first one was done by the nurse, and then later on my husband actually helped me with that. So yeah, it's a new marriage milestone at the same time. And then at a certain point, I had an enema as well. So basically with the enema, they insert the thing up your butt, spray some water. Within 5 minutes, you could go to the restroom. So this would be before the Pitocin drip. After they put the Pitocin, I could start feeling contractions a little bit more stronger. It started to feel uncomfortable and pain at some point. But at the same time, I was a little bit relieved as well, in a sense that the contractions were moving along. That would in theory mean that I was getting more and more dilated. At a certain point, a few hours after the Pitocin, I was only about at 3-4 centimeters, and I was wrecked. I guess it was stress, because if I didn't get 10 cm dilated in time, there was a possibility that I could have an emergency C-section. So there was that added stress over there. Then after finding out I was about only 3-4 cm dilated, and along with the uncomfortable feeling, and it wasn't to a stage where the pain was unmanageable, but I would rather not have it, so I decided to go with epidural. So with the epidural process, basically they have to call a doctor in, so the nurse prepped me and everything, and then the doctor came, and then I actually had to get out from the bed, sit up from the bed, sit up on one side so that the doctor could put the needle at my back. And at this point, I felt basically I was feeling very emotional, because I was stressed that I wasn't as far dilated along as I thought I would be. So very emotional, and then I was like crying, and I don't know if I was super scared about the epidural, but I was crying. I was like scared and crying, and then at this point, I felt the doctor and the nurse at that point was really invalidating. So the doctor was like, he hasn't put the needle in. He actually, used his fingernail, his thumbnail to like press on my skin. So I mean, a normal human being would give a reaction. I don't know. Anyway, at that point, so going back, I felt they were really invalidating. They really invalidated my feelings to a sense that the doctor said was like, um, it's not gonna be that bad. Haven't put the needle in, blah blah blah. And then the nurse, I can't remember if she said this while putting the epidural or after that. She was like, I think it was after that, she was like, you're a mother now, you have to bear this, blah blah blah. And basically I felt both of them were really invalidating because they did, I'm pretty sure they have seen mothers being scared, going through this process, being emotional. So it's normal for me to feel scared. And again, they didn't know this, but they should have have this at the thought of their mind that I could have been emotional for the whole process as well. So basically I felt very unhappy during that time. But anyway, so got the epidural in. After they put the epidural in, it will takes, I think, probably half an hour or more, a little bit, for you to lose sensation at your legs. I mean, basically from your lower half of your body. So another question comes about is that how do you go pee when you can't feel anything, which was not something I thought of. So basically, when I still had a little bit of sensation, the nurse that invalidated my feelings um, basically it's like they have to put in a captive catheter. Can't remember what it's called. I can't pronounce it. Up your urethra, and then she would have to press on your stomach to release the pee out because you can't feel anything, which didn't occur to me. So she had to stick that tube up my urethra, press, and the urine comes out. With the epidural, you really can't feel anything from the lower part of your body. But after a few hours in, at a certain point, I was starting to feel a little bit. It's not anything intense, so that's when they increase the epidural dosage. The nurse would increase the dosage accordingly. So basically, can't feel anything, which was great. At a certain point, I think it was Saturday evening or Saturday night, my gynae came and he, did a check, and basically he checked, and he broke my water. But I was a little bit unsatisfied during this moment because when he was like up in my vagina and he said he would, I can't remember if he said he would break my water or something. And I asked if it was a membrane sweep, and he said yes. But when I, checked back again what was the process of a membrane sweep, it's different from actually breaking the water. So essentially, he broke my water, and yeah, I don't think he really asked. Yeah, he didn't ask whether I'll be okay for him to break my water. And I'm not sure if this is a standard procedure where doctors do whatever they want to do without asking you because they think they know best. But at that point I was a little bit unhappy because it wasn't membrane sweet. You did not ask me if you could break my water, but you just did it anyway. After breaking my water, um, basically I dilated much faster, and by this time Saturday night, I think around 11, it was really close, almost time for me to deliver. And before just before like I was going to deliver, I started shivering, like I couldn't control it. And I was like thinking, am I shivering because I'm cold? But I remember reading one of the side effects of epidural is that, you know, shivering that you can't control. So basically I was trying to control it, but I couldn't. So basically I was shivering, and I was um, I wanted to throw up as well. And throughout this whole process, I ate, because the nurses and the doctors, everybody say it was okay to eat. But I read online that you shouldn't be eating because you could throw up. But I was like, okay, since nobody said anything, I'll just continue eating it here and there. So yeah, basically, if you can, don't eat, or don't eat such heavy foods. I don't know. So yeah, basically shivering before starting the the delivery, and also throwing up. So the big moment. So when I was ready to, or supposedly, from what the nurses told me, ready to push, um, I always thought that, you know, the doctor would be there from start to finish when you're ready to push, but apparently not. So there were three nurses in the room with me, and because of the epidural, I'm not able to feel anything. So basically, the nurses helped with that, and how they help is, so basically, the nurses would be like, okay, it's time to push, and then will tell me to push, and then the nurses will actually uh, basically help me to push, like push on my stomach. But of course I have to try. Like you can't feel anything from your lower body, so what can you do? So the nurses basically say, like, you know, you hold the, I can't remember what was the thing called, the thing on the sign, and your legs are up as well. And then basically they were saying, there is like like make yourself pee, but you can't feel anything. But anyway, so it's like you do according to what the nurses tell you, or what the nurse told me. And then the three nurses were pushing on my stomach as well to help along with that. So that went on about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, to a certain point where I think that they could probably see the head. That's when they called the doctor in. So when the doctor came, um yeah, so when the doctor came, I think they could probably see the head already. And then continue pushing, and then the baby's here. Yeah, very anticlimactic the way I say it, but yeah, the baby is here. So apparently the doctor did a cut on my vagina to get the baby head through. But again, this was something that the doctor didn't tell me at all. My husband, who was in the room looking at the process, actually shared that. And I didn't know that he was stitching me up either. Like, okay, after I gave birth, the nurses put the baby on my stomach a little bit. Again, very anticlimactic, because I thought there would be skin to skin, but apparently there wasn't. It was baby to the rope or to my stomach, I can't remember, but not really the skin to skin and my chest area. And then they told the baby, just clean up the baby. And then the doctor was basically working on my vagina. I thought he was just you know, getting the placenta out and everything. I didn't really know that he was stitching me up. And then later on, my husband told me, or probably the doctor told me, but again, I wasn't told that he will make a cut during that time, which I wish he would have mentioned. I'm not sure if it's a normal thing, or whether they try to be considerate during that time, whether to not to stress you a little bit more. But yeah, so after giving birth to the baby was in the room for a while. We took picture, I would say 2 pictures, and like a few pictures, okay fine, a few pictures. And I look so ugly. I wish I was those camera ready mothers, but I wasn't. I wanted to be, but I wasn't. But yeah, so the baby was in the room for a little bit. and then they took the baby out of the room to, I think to basically check, make sure everything is okay. So we were in the delivery ward. We couldn't move to the normal hospital room until they checked everything with the baby. I think that took about 2 hours. I think by the time we moved rooms was about maybe 2-3 a.m. already. So we went. Luckily, the nurse called ahead and we got a single room, so my husband could stay with me throughout. I was a little bit worried that I couldn't get the like a single room, but the nurse that I had, she was good. It wasn't the earlier nurse that invalidated my feelings. It was a totally different nurse. So we moved rooms. Then after that, this, I can't remember what is it called. I'm just gonna call it the normal hospital room. In the maternity ward. Yeah, the maternity ward. So I think the first time they brought the baby to that room was probably about around 4 a.m. on Sunday, and then it's to breastfeed. So during this time, I was really tired and everything. So yeah. So often every few hours when the baby was hungry, they will bring the baby to the room and I will try to breastfeed the best that I could. And in the maternity ward as well, and I think since I checked in, not I think I know, there wasn't any time to really rest properly. So by Sunday, I was like a zombie already. Because I took a epidural, the nurses had to make sure that after a few hours, I could walk and pee on my own. This was an absolute must before they discharged me, just to make sure everything was going all right. So I think in the morning, I can't remember what time, I could walk to the toilet, but I think one of my legs, I can't remember, didn't have as much sensation still, but I still could walk, and I could pee as well. So that was a good sign. And then later on in the morning, the doctor came and just asked. So it was funny. So the first doctor that came was the doctor that gave the epidural, and he was just asking like, is everything okay, etc, etc. And I actually thought that, this doctor who supposedly was so good to check out on me after that. I'll get to that later. So after that, my gynae came in and just basically asked, am I doing okay? He didn't did any physical examination or anything. And I said I was okay, and then he said, okay, you can be discharged today. And I was like, huh? I thought I would need to stay at the hospital for another day or two, but apparently you could, straight away get discharged, which was surprising to me, but okay. So yeah, that was essentially my experience, my whole labor experience in a nutshell. I have like a detailed timeline that I wrote, but it's probably too much in detail for me to write about. So one of the curious questions that I had before giving birth and trying to consider whether to go to a private or government hospital was the cost. So at Sunway Velocity Medical Centre, they have this like 30% promotion for scheduled C-sections and natural birth. But if you see the terms and conditions, it's always that it's not for complicated births, it's blah blah blah. So there's a lot of T&Cs, which is I think standard across any hospital any private hospital that you go to. So essentially, I had two bills. So the first bill was for myself. It came up to about 6,000 plus, approximately 6,000 plus. And then another one was for my newborn, which was about 1,000 plus. And this one was, I think, I read about it, but it was surprising for me to get it for the first time, because I thought the bill would be just lumped together, but apparently I guess because my son, it's another individual, so they had to bill it separately. So in total it was about 7,000 plus, and my company covers part of it, so I'm really glad. So I only, like, it's basically subsidized, and I have to pay the remaining amount. Oh yes. So basically when the bill came, going through the charges, there was one for the doctor who did the epidural, and basically there was like a post consultation fee. So essentially, after I gave birth, him coming to the room and like, hey, how are you, I'm being charged for that. It wasn't out of the goodness of his heart. It was basically, yeah, I'm gonna come in for like 1-2 minutes, ask you how are you, and charge you. Oh my god. Felt like a fool after that. In a nutshell, that was my experience giving birth at a private hospital in Malaysia. There were some things that I wish I could change. Like, for example, I wish I had more information from my own doctors in terms of what they were doing, rather than they doing it themselves. But essentially, I'm very happy that, you know, my son was delivered safely, and yeah, and I'm really glad that everything was good in the end, but in the process it was a little bit difficult. In the hospital there were a lot of nurses, but basically because of their shift change, and all of the nurses were good, very friendly, very attentive, or at least, you know, very neutral. It was only that nurse during that shift that she was very invalidating to me the whole time. It wasn't just during the epidural, but basically I just felt like the whole time she was with me, I just didn't like her vibe, what she was saying, etc., etc. I hope my video managed to help someone to understand the process a little bit better. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll try my best to answer it. Thank you so much for, you know, taking the time to watch this video, and I hope to, you know, share my more experiences soon. Bye.